Hi, everyone. It's that time of the year where everybody wants to talk about how well their air layers did, and they're getting ready to separate them from the tree and show you all the beautiful roots, get ready to pot everything up. For Japanese maples, air layering is really a great way to generate a growing branch and rooting it and being able to create a new plant. But things don't always go the way you like, and I thought it would be fun today to show you some of my failures. A lot of people talk about how great their air layers did, and I would be no exception. I want to focus in on things that go bad when you're dealing with these air layers. Not all of them work out the way you want them to, and I thought I'd just give you some ideas on what might help improve your air layering success rate, but also so you don't feel bad when your air layers don't work out or the plants die. That's happened to me a lot, and sharing some of my bad experiences with air layering. So I want to go back a few years. My first experience with air layering was actually not myself doing it, but I went to a nursery and I purchased a recent air layer. It was a Nishikigawa Japanese maple. I was so excited to have a pine bark maple, and I thought I could use it as a nice bonsai starter. So anyway, I bought this plant. It was an air layer. The owner of the nursery told me it was 1 year old. It was started the summer before and was selling it to me in late winter before the leaves had really leafed out. And what I learned from that, I would say it was the best $80 lesson I ever spent, which was it's really too soon to be selling someone an air layer 1 year after you take it off the tree. The roots may or may not be completely established, and the success rate really for specialized cultivars of Japanese maples is, I think it's 50-50 whether it survives or not. So the plant started leafing out okay, but it didn't thrive and it started to die back. And so I took it out of the pot just to see what was going on, and the roots were pretty much dead. Whether they died because of me or they died because they just weren't strong enough, having been cut off the plant just the previous fall, I don't know. But in any case, what I did learn from that is to be very careful about when you do take air layers and you pot them up. If you're going to give them away to your friends or to keep them as your plants, just be very careful. I would suggest holding the plants for 2 years and to make sure everything's really thriving, the root system is good before you give them to your friends. So anyway, I learned that really understand that the roots of an air layer are the most important thing. You just really want to have a really strong, good root system. Now, how you get that good root system starts with the air layer itself. So my first suggestion when you're doing these air layering is to get good quality sphagnum moss. Here's an example of some sphagnum moss that I bought from the garden store at Home Depot. It's a moss-early brand. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that sometimes the quality is up and down. And if you take a look at this one, you can see that it's kind of a gray color. It's not very fluffy, it's kind of stringy. And I found that the best sphagnum moss for air layering is going to be, I think, a higher quality sphagnum moss that's a little lighter in color, it's more fluffy. You can kind of tell if it looks kind of gray and dead, it probably is kind of gray and dead. So, you can try different sources. I found that in recent times, the cost of sphagnum moss, you can get different brands off of Amazon or other online stores, but the price has really shot up on that. So one thing that I've tried to do is to recycle sphagnum moss, and you can do it. I think it doesn't work as well as fresh moss out of the bag, but with the cost being what it is, just be aware that the lighter color it is, the better it's going to work, I think. And also, you'll be able to tell because over the course of a summer, if you use kind of inferior moss or recycle it, you're going to get some weird things going on. Like you'll see algae growing in it, and you just kind of know something's not quite right with it. So anyway, start with fresh. For your best chances, for your most difficult cultivars, I'd say use a fresh batch of really nice white, white or light tan fluffy sphagnum moss. So the next thing is how much moisture should be in your sphagnum moss when you put it into your air layer. I find with this that you really want to squeeze out a lot of moisture. It seems like you would want it to be damp so that the roots can grow, but what I found is that when the roots are growing, too much moisture is, I think, is going to suffocate the roots. And so you think your air layer is going to dry out over the summer, but I think you get some moisture in through, just the rain that kind of migrates into your plastic bag or from the tree itself. So I would say when you start your air layer, squeeze it out so it looks almost too dry. Okay, the next thing is you're going to know if your air layer is not doing well if the bag, your air layer bag, starts filling up with water over the course of the summer. I think the indication is just that there's no roots, and if there are no roots in there, any water that's in the air layer is not migrating up into the branch and into the leaves. That's kind of usually a good sign to know that your plant is not rooting ahead of when you realize that you don't see any roots. So that's one thing to be cautioned about. I'm not sure whether I would suggest that you undo it, squeeze out all the excess water, then put it back again. It may be that it's just not going to work that particular season. You could take a try at that, but I don't know exactly what I would suggest for that. But it is an indication that you're probably not going to have success on that particular air layer. So, how long should you leave the air layer on the tree before you cut it off and pot it? My suggestion is to leave it on as long as possible to get the roots to develop as much as you can while the branch is still being supported by the tree. Once you cut it off, the branch is going to be only supported by the root system that has developed. If you don't have enough roots, one suggestion is to really chop back on the growth so that you have a balance between the roots and the leaves and the branches that you leave on the plant that you cut off. In the past, I've done some air layers where there were a few roots, and I thought, well, I think that's enough to support the plant, and then it died over the winter. So if you have any doubts, you may want to just leave it on one more year, and if you're worried about roots freezing over the winter, you can go and try and wrap the whole ball with insulation, like foam or something like that. But to be honest, in the Pacific Northwest, it doesn't get cold enough for any kind of special treatment. So just leave it on the tree and hope that it roots more strongly given another year of time. Okay, so let's get to some of the good stuff, which is seeing my examples of air layering failures. The one that I'm probably the most sad about recently is Mikawa yatsubusa air layer that I tried to do last year. It was rooting very nicely. You could see all the roots in the root ball. I potted it up, and the mistake I made on this one is I didn't tie it down to the pot well enough. And because the root balls tend to be very sensitive and not very strong, I think there was some movement of the plant and probably dislodged the roots and broke the root ball off the plant in the pot. And so my suggestion to you is to wire it or tie it down. For the larger air layers, what I do is I tie the whole tree to something solid like a fence or to another tree, and that usually keeps it pretty stable. So for smaller ones, you'll want to get some wire and wire it to the pot to keep it from moving. And I think keeping the roots stable in the pot is critical for success. One of my worst failures, and it's really due to me being kind of boneheaded about it. I had a very nice rooted branch, like maybe 2 inches in diameter, 2.5 inches in diameter, that I cut off of the tree. Nice root ball. It was a very hot day when I did the potting, and because I was doing a number of branches at the same time, I wanted to keep the root ball from drying out. Usually, what I'll do is I'll mist it down with a spray bottle. But in this case, I thought, well, I'll just get water from the garden hose poured over the root ball to keep it wet while I potted the other plants. And what happens is the sphagnum moss absorbs or holds all that water, becomes a very heavy mass. And when I was moving the plant, I bumped the branch I can't remember, against maybe the side of my deck or something, and the whole root ball, because of the weight, just fell off. And that was the most disappointing thing, cultivating this air layer through the whole summer and then have a whole root ball laying on the ground. Very depressing. So I did try and salvage this. It's a tiny branch that may survive. And it was just a waste because being careless and not thinking it through. So my suggestion on a hot day, if you want to either cover the roots with a damp rag or spray it down with a spray bottle, but don't soak it in a bucket of water or don't wet it down with a hose because the roots can't handle the weight of the extra water in the root ball. So that was a good lesson learned. Speaking of it being too hot, my suggestion is when you separate your branches from the tree, pick a cool day or a cloudy day. It just helps to reduce the stress on the plant when you separate it. One thing you're likely to see when you do air layers is in the spring or summer following separation of the tree that you get some branch dieback. That can be normal. It really has to do with the balance between the roots and the branches and leaves. Basically, if there's an imbalance, the tree has to, I think, make a decision on which branches it can support. And if you think about it, say as a plumbing system, you can almost predict which branches are going to die, then use your pruning methods or cutting back methods when you trim off some of the extra growth before you pot it up or after you pot it up. That's really going to determine whether the tree survives better or struggles and has to sacrifice some branches or leaves by dying back. The point being, when you see branches die back or whole sides of the tree dying back, that's just the way it goes sometimes. So even if sometimes your air layers don't work out, don't get discouraged. Just keep trying. We all make mistakes, and sometimes you just can't do anything about it. Nature does what it wants to do. And really, there's nothing like the sense of satisfaction you get when your air layers do work out and you have a nice new plant for yourself or to share with your friends. So that's all I have for this week. I hope you found it interesting. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them for me and I'll answer them for you. Well, have a good week, and we'll see you next time.